Hello class and welcome back. If you check out the notes down here today, doing a little bit differently today, wanted to show you a cool way to take notes. We used to kind of encourage this all the time, and I would encourage you going forward next year in science or high school science to still use this. They call it Cornell notes. It's really just a divided up page. Usually you have the title at the top. It doesn't have to look exactly like this, but if you check out the title at the top, and I also wanted to kind of show you when we do the notes in the class, it's really not that much, but I would very much encourage you to write down the notes. Had a biology teacher way back in high school who encouraged us to rewrite our notes. At the time I thought, wow, that's a lot of extra work. Why would I want to do that? And I realized later, and it turns out studies show that if you rewrite your own notes, you remember things much, much better. So let's go on through our notes for the day. This will be, of course, posted online. I know a lot of students say, hey, can I take a picture of the board? That's fine, but then take that picture and write it down yourself. Take the time to do that because you remember it better when you actually physically write down the words that are on the page rather than just take the picture, print it out, and put it in your notes. It's not really quite the same thing. So jumping on through today, current events, CNN 10, they had forecasters. When you divide up the paper like this, by the way, the last little thing before I really jump in, usually leave a little spot on the left or the right, doesn't matter where, for writing questions as you go. As the teacher or the video or whatever is lecturing, you can say, hey, I wonder about this. You can jot it on down as you go. I will use this space over here to just kind of talk a little bit about what was on the main part of the notes. And you'll notice also I use outline format. Outline format is fantastic. We do that with 5-paragraph essays all the time. So again, really encourage the use of writing your own notes and doing the outline format. Okay, forecasters predict a busy hurricane season. How do they know? Water temperatures. If you look at warm water encourages more hurricanes. That's not the only factor. There's a lot of factors that go into a hurricane. It has to do with the strength of the jet stream, where the jet stream is flowing, all kinds of variables go into it. But when they take all those variables into account, they're looking for more than average number of hurricanes. Remember, hurricanes are a lot like cyclones and typhoons. As a matter of fact, they're all the same thing. They just go by different names. On our side, the northern side of the equator, hurricanes, if you ever see the clouds kind of spinning off them, they kind of spin like this, and it goes in a counterclockwise direction up here north of the equator, and of course south of the equator goes in the opposite direction. So if you check out, that has to do with something called the Coriolis effect. We talked about that way back in earth science, but the long and the short of it is hurricanes, typhoons, and cyclones, they're all the same thing. Okay, and also viruses. Again, they're talking about the viruses, and social distancing will be used in the workplace. They moved away from the use of cubicles over the last couple of years. Cubicles, of course, are like little boxes where people work in their own little, almost kind of semi-walled-in workplace if they're in a big open cube field together, they used to call them. We've kind of moved away from that in the last couple of years, although they're kind of moving back towards that again to just keep people a little distance to try and stop the spread of the virus. Remember, the virus doesn't spread itself. People and animals spread this particular coronavirus. Okay, if you check out the animal kingdom, we've been talking about the most diverse phylum, arthropods. When we're talking about the most diverse, if you were to do, remember good old math class, if you were to do a pie chart and you were to draw a pie chart of all the animals in existence on this planet, we've got 8 phylum that we talked about. If you were to shade in 75 to 80% of that pie chart, that is the number of animals that would be in the phylum Arthropoda, bugs. If you check out, when you check out the segmented body, when you look at the way the word is broken apart, it comes from 2 words put together that means joint and foot. One of the really useful things, and I was hoping to kind of sneak it in before the end of the school year, I'll see if I can at least put it out there on the notes, is to look at the Latin roots of words. Think about a tripod. If you set up a tripod for a camera, you've got 3 legs. Tripod, 3 legs. A pod means foot. You saw with amoebas, for example, an amoeba will move along and it's got a pseudopod, which means fake foot. That's how they kind of move themselves along. An arthropod comes from 2 words. That means jointed foot. And that is one of their defining characteristics. Down here on this part of the page, I always leave a little room somewhere when I do my Cornell notes like this, a little bit of room for a diagram. In this right here, let's do ourselves a very, very quick basic insect. Let's check it out, see what the main parts are. Start off with just 3 circles. There you go, you draw yourself 3 circles. I've already kind of sketched it lightly in pencil to kind of help myself out here to make sure I fit it all in. You got yourself an insect. 3 circles stand for the 3 body parts. The first body part here, and I'll color this one in with the pen I'm holding right now, is the abdomen. And let's write that in, abdomen. The next body part right here, which I'll just use whatever color I have handy. This one happens to be blue. This is where the legs are located. And when you check out the segmented legs that come off it, you have the thorax. So go ahead and write that down. This would also be where the wings would be located for the insects that have wings. Not all insects have wings. Many, many species do, but not all of them do. And we have to put in 2 eyes. Why the eyes? This is the last section, the head. Makes sense. Now, segmented bodies were a huge leap forward in terms of evolution. We have segmented bodies. If you look at the 3 main segments in a insect's body, the things to look for right here on the head are compound eyes. They generally, not all of them, but they generally do not have eyes anything like human eyes. They have eyes that allow them to see many different directions at the same time. One of the reasons that flies, for example, are hard to swat because they can see you coming. That's not the main reason, though. We'll talk about the main reason on that in just a second. And we're going to write down, just to make sure that we remember it, segmented legs. Legs with joints, segmented legs. Again, a huge leap forward in evolution. If you check out, jumping to the summary, which I'll go over again at the end, they've been on our planet for about 500 million years. That number right there, 500 million years, should look pretty familiar to us because that was when, you might remember, we talked about the Cambrian explosion. In that neighborhood of time was when life exploded in terms of diversity. There was almost all of the major phylum that exists now came from the Cambrian explosion around 500 million years ago. Okay, so let's run on through this. They've got the segmented body parts, specialized body parts, gigantic leap forward in evolution there. No vertebrae. Again, this is where we get into one of those Latin roots. We are animals in the same kingdom, but we are chordates. We have a backbone. They do not have a backbone, or do not have a skeleton for that matter. They have an exoskeleton. I probably should have capitalized the word exoskeleton because that's going to be one of our key terms next week. But exoskeleton, made from a protein called chitin, C-H-I-T-I-N. I did capitalize that one. Remember, I've asked you to always look up and define those capitalized words that you see there. And to grow, because this is a hard exoskeleton, they have to shed this. This is called molting. That's not a key term, but it's just kind of important to know that that's how bugs, insects, arthropoda, grow larger. They have to actually shed the outer shell, and they then create one that's soft at first. If you ever had soft shell crabs, you've had the protein, the chitin covering, before it's reached this really hard stage. And the last little thing that we talked a little bit about here, we're going to talk about the compound eyes and why flies are so tough to swat. All over the body. I'm just going to draw in a couple real quick right here. They've got sensilia. They're little tiny hair-like. Now I say hair-like because they're not true hairs. They're sensory cells. When you go to swat a fly, if a fly is crawling along in your paper and you go to swat it, it almost always sees you coming, or senses you coming, because these extremely, extremely sensitive cells that usually there's hundreds, usually thousands all over the body, that help them sense little things like air current movement, vibrations, even temperature differences are absolutely amazing. And of course, some, not all, but some have antennae or antenna. And if you check out our homework, remember I always use a little HW symbol because it's my little personal quick way of writing homework instead of writing the word homework every time on the board. You might remember that from class. Remember, you should be looking for an example of each of the 8 phylum that we had in our animal notes. So the animal kingdom we broke down the other day into 8 different phylum, the 8 major phylum. There's more than 8 phylum in the animal kingdom, but we asked you to look up an example from each of the 8 phylum that we had in class. So our quick recap right here. Arthropods are by far the dominant form of animal life. They evolved about 500 million years ago. And remember to put into your notes, there are 3 segmented body parts. And if you look at the segmented body parts, again, during the Cambrian explosion about 500 million years ago, absolutely huge leap forward in evolution. One of the other things I just wanted to point out, when you look at this 1 page of notes, there's a lot of information there. So I always go for the 1 page a day. Usually if this was a normal class, we would have 1 page of notes on one side, and then the other side, the right side of the paper, would be the activity or whatever the lab was that day or something like that. Hope you're having a great Memorial weekend, and I will talk to you soon. Next time we'll probably see you in person from the whiteboard again, but I just thought I'd show you a little bit of Cornell notes from home. Take care. Bye-bye.